Hey, everybody, welcome to the MOBB Mentality Podcast. We're going to do things a little bit different today. We're not going to start off with our usual intro, and we're going to just jump right into it and introduce Dr. Hema Murty. And I am very excited that she is here. You are an expert in helping women over 50 manage stress and live a more productive, healthy lifestyle. But today, you're willing to step out of the box a little bit and talk to all the mothers out there of all ages. And what you can get out of today's episode is we're going to address the importance of taking care of your own health, the how you can do that through some basic strategies, and also what to do during that time frame, and overcoming the obstacle of time and no longer letting that be a barrier to taking care of your mental and your physical health. So, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited to jump into this episode.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it, Seisha. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to address that whole mother equation. And I'm so glad to be here with you.
We're excited. So, would you mind just giving us a little bit about your extensive background, professional background that I know that you have?
Yeah, sure. I'm an aerospace engineer by training, and training myself during stressful times, during that whole career path with the PhD and the eventual organizational positions that I held, successive positions with in industry and corporate and university. Obviously, stress is a factor of any kind of an educational pathway and professional, kind of or responsibilities. So that was my key factor in understanding the whole fitness equation. Like it was just this, kind of gray area where I just really didn't know what the details were. Like how does the fitness industry come up with strategies to create a stress-free zone? How do they program? And I just want to know the answers to all those questions. My engineering brain kicked in and said,
Yes.
yeah, my engineering brain kicked in and kind of said, look, if you can figure this, hard stuff out, I'm sure you can figure out this equation at the level that you need to for, I don't want to be an expert in that, but I just want to have that knowledge base so that I can help myself and then be the fittest version of myself so I can be productive. Basically, that's the end result. What comes out the other end? I don't want to be, a jock just to be an Arnold type of person, human being. I want to be a person who's productive, who can manage the stress, who can just contribute in the best way possible. What's the best version of Hema? So answering that question throughout, I realized that the fitness industry was just at the time, this was, way back, but at the time they were lacking in certain kind of an integrated approach. They would, specify maybe a weight training program. Another person would have to come in and specify nutrition. And then there were 10 people who would say the different things. And it was just becoming a very confusing platform for a person who's not into it, just wants to
Mhm.
use it as a tool to get better, to navigate that whole knowledge base. So I decided, okay, I'll just carve out some time and figure this all out. What is the problem? What is the solution to my quest, my personal quest? And that's how
Mhm.
my journey started as a fitness professional. And I call myself a fitness professional because I realized at the end of all of that, that one has to be an integrated machine. You have to know what weight training protocol or exercise, let's keep it loose, exercise protocol works for person A as opposed to person B. What are the parameters you're looking for? Like it always became an engineering problem with me, and and the
Love
solution
that.
thereof for not yeah, right. So my brain was working like an engineering problem, and I said, well, there's a set of parameters that a person needs to have, and what is appropriate for them is not a question. So that was statement number one that I came up with, was that it's got to be an individualized assessment. There's no two things, there's no two programs that are going to be exactly the same. So then as time went on, I realized, just to cut this story short, is that as time went on, I realized that women, especially women over 50, were the most shortchanged in terms of products and fitness advice and programming. And why? Because I realized that the programming, while catering to the male audience, also didn't cater to the time element, which I was suffering from as well as a professional. So I found that
I imagine.
yeah, the programs and the nutrition info out there and the stress management techniques were not catering to people who have a schedule already, want to fit the fitness into their life, not the life into the, you want to live at the gym. You want to have even a home workout. Can I cut this down into the minimum possible 3 exercises that I would need to do to stay muscularly effective so that I don't get injured, I don't get sick, I don't, be not able to do the things I want to do, get groceries out of the car, play golf, play tennis, whatever it is I want to do, go for a walk, go running, so fast forward to now, fasting forward to now. So I just realized that, the women over 50 clientele were what I want to focus on, just that demographic, because they were the most underspoken to in terms of programming and ideas of how to fit fitness into their life in the short time they've got to access. And then there was that whole nutrition question of what do I eat to stay healthy? And then there's the stress factor of reaching for, sugary snacks. So how am I going to fix this whole issue, that whole domain of you've got stress, you solve it through sugary snacks. You can't, because that'll make you unhealthy and you're not getting your nutrition base. So that's another equation I wanted to solve personally and also with my clients. And then I realized what that answer was, and I started treating the clients in trying to get them to the place where they want to be. Like one client in that demographic went for a walk with her dog. Simple, easy thing, and she was really extremely fit. She, does deep diving, and she does a lot of things that are active. She's very active. Weight training was one thing she did. She was in my yoga class. So despite all of that, going for a walk with her dog, one day I got her a text from her saying that she had done something with her ankle. She's not really sure what she did with her leg, but she can't make it home. So could I fix this? And then I was looking at this, and it was a very acute kind of sick, critical phase. I got to get her home, first of all. So first and foremost, my engineering brain said, figure out the least way possible you can get this woman home. So, I told her a few things to do. I had known, she was a client, so I know her body. I know what she could do and what she is capable of on her walk. Like that can get away with this. I can tell her.
I'm smiling because I think it's so funny that she can't walk it. Like she reaches out to you as her lifeline.
Right. Well, this is a common story, and we'll get into that because it turns after this women over 50 demographic, I started even niching down more into women over 50 with pain, because I noticed that was the stumbling blocks. I kept realizing where's the bottleneck here in the fitness equation. Mm-hmm. So now I specialize in pain solutions. So, getting back to this one lady. So I texted her through a few movement exercises that she could do. I kind of knew what was going on without even seeing her, no video. So I was just going by what I'd known about her, and also just my general knowledge of how probably this will solve itself. So doing that, she was able to get back home, and she raves now, and she was sold on the technique. So yeah, basically that's, that answers that portion of the question. First is that, how did I get into this? That was just my own story, and also my observation of the fact that which demographic is really getting shortchanged here, not specifically speaking to them. And so this was where I niched down into the women over 50, especially those with pain issues who curtail their activities, which are the activities that give them the mental health in the first place. They play golf for mental health. They can't see, right? So, yes. And I know this from a lot of clients, because when I was training a lot of women over 50, and the client base, a lot of times they say, I can't meet you today. Why? Because I heard blah, and now I'm not playing golf, and I'm grumpy, and I'm not playing tennis. I'm grumpy because I can't go play with my friends. Sounds like it's same thing that creates our mental health space, is that when we see other people, not family obligations, but outside of that, we need to have that. And if we don't, our mental health will suffer. So I noticed that as a trend, and then I kind of niche down into how do we get pain solutions going. So that's the short story.
I love this area because you are so right on. As women age, I think there's just naturally more pain that seems to come with age. And so being able to dive into this pain category, like what are some common pain points that you see even from a physical perspective? And then what are some of those basic tips that you give somebody in order to be able to manage that?
Yeah, great question, because a lot of the times it's the common stuff. And I spoke with one of some of my colleagues the other day. It's unfortunately the most common and basic things are the things that everyone has. It's not, as you would call in quotes, rocket science, although that's what I am. It's not. I know it's not, but it's the basic stuff: back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain. And the funny thing about those, why am I interested in this demographic, is because a lot of the mental stress, like the family stress, stemming from obligation or the need to want to do things. Women just have a different way of thinking about the world, and it's good. It's like a service industry. We're all caregivers at some deep down location in our body and our psyche. We just want to help, and it doesn't matter who. You're here in my space, I'm going to help you. Like, how's my brain kicking in now?
Yes.
And so in doing that, we find a lot of the pain emanates from those mental stresses that trickle down into the body. So pain becomes not just a bone issue, a muscle issue, nerves not firing or something of that nature. Like, okay, maybe you haven't trained some part of your body and now you're loading it, pain. That's one part of it. But the other part of it is you add fuel to that pain by creating an angst. And it's natural with a lot of women, like 80% of the women in my client base, I would say, can easily create pain through their mental stress from all their family obligations and outside, the extended family, the community, the workplace, you name it, and
Yes.
it's just, it goes on from that. And that's one of the things. Now, talking to the point of what do we do is it's a
Yes.
preemptive a preemptive strike, basically, in the sense that before the pain hits, you have to create a proactive program. So let's say, okay, we're talking, I know your audience has mothers of children of very different age groups. And so the mother of toddlers or teenage children will have a very different schedule than, say, a grandmother type of a situation, or a mother of a daughter who's got toddlers. So that has to be clear. A person's mind, they have to know, what is my schedule? Where do I fit in this whole scheme of things? And so with the client base I have, they have extended families. So they might be grandparents, or they might have nieces and nephews, or that kind of thing. So their schedule does go into the children format. So I'm kind of familiar with how the scheduling stresses
Hmm.
out people too. But in
They may
that
even be
schedule,
caretakers at that stage.
exactly, right, of the
Hmm.
parents and so on. So there's all kinds of arrows going all over the place for
Yes.
caregiving, stress reactions to timetable and scheduling and demands on the person. But the really important preemptive strike that any woman can do is to take 5 minutes out of their day and look at their day. I know it's hard to see, but if you could carve out 5 minutes to look at your day, and in a really realistic way, almost do
I love
a
that key word. It has to be relevant and it has to be realistic. And
absolutely.
if it does not fit your lifestyle and what you have to offer, like, I don't think any type of program is gonna stick, and then
No,
also it sets these unrealistic expectations, which then
exactly.
becomes completely overwhelming and stressful in itself.
Yeah, and you hit it straight on, because you just said what the one problem is that everyone has, specifically women with their demanding schedule. So what I always suggest to clients is, before you even start with anybody, not just me, but any trainer or any type of idea, I'm going to do this. Before you even go, stop and take a 1 week log of your real timetable. Just get a really cold, logical grasp of where we're at. What are we dealing with here? Is there absolutely nothing in your time in terms of in your schedule in terms of time? Or
Mhm.
If you want to make time, so if you want to do that preemptive strike because you want to create a body that will never get into the situation where you try to get groceries out of the car and you're like stuck because you can't get the step up into the house because you've done something with your hip, and now what, and now you've got to wait for your caregiver, like a chiropractor or RMT appointment. Are you going to suffer in pain, sit around with
Mhm.
just the pain, or are you going to be able to do something to get rid of that? So before you can get into solution strategies, you have had to have done something with your body. You've had to create a time space where you do some stretching, where you do some self-awareness, like even journaling, or even just taking 5 minutes to write three gratification. I'm grateful for these three things in my life. That just takes down that whole trauma, the body trauma, by an order of magnitude, as simple as that sounds. And, I mean, a lot of people are familiar with different types of prayer, whatever's personal for them, different type of just saying, I want these three things to happen today. I want these things to happen in my career. Just being aware that somehow takes out some of that bottled up stress that we create by not putting it down on paper or just saying it to ourselves, even talking into, if paper and pen is a hard thing to organize in the morning, just take your phone and record and say, I hope these three things, I hope my son gets this, my daughter gets this, and I hope, I get, work out this other issue that I'm working on, whatever it is, these
Yes.
three things, it's off. And now you can go on with your day and be a little proactive. So carving out time in a realistic, so take a log of your actual day, a real typical week. In fact, I would stop at one day. I would suggest even 2 weeks if you have the luxury of just stopping and analyzing what a whole log of how your 2 weeks went. Then take a look at it and say, okay, I'm not getting exercise in or any kind of a self-awareness practice in. I'm not getting, maybe my nutrition could be better. Maybe my sleep can be better. Maybe my water hydration can be better. Maybe stress management can be better. So the problem with everyone is January hits and they want to do everything. They want to
Yes.
build the 2.0 of themselves on January 2nd by doing stuff on January 1. And that's where the tumbling block occurs, and you see them a week later and nothing's happened, or they think that their program is not serving them, which is a bad place for people to be in general, let alone mothers, because we have enough stuff that keeps us feeling we're inadequate. We don't need stuff like
Right?
that. You
We don't need to be
don't
our
need,
own enemy as well.
right? So yeah, absolutely. So we don't need to create more stuff that makes us feel like we're not up to scruff. Um, so
Yes.
I always suggest to my clients that we're going to figure out from that analysis which is the lowest hanging fruit. So instead of saying, okay, I don't have half an hour to, I don't know, meditate in the morning or something like that, of course, who does? But the point is, let's say
Yeah.
you're feeling like you want to make an improvement. What's the lowest hanging fruit? So maybe let's tackle sleep is tough for women and mothers in general. And exercise is also tough because you have to carve out some area. You have to, it's all,
Mhm.
planning. No, that's not going to happen. So let's go to the nutrition phase and the water phase because those are a little bit easier to handle as an improvement. And we just pick one thing and we go, okay, are you, and the nutrition, you can always break that down into your nutrients. Are you getting enough protein? And again, enough, fats? Are you getting enough carbs? Are you getting enough, water? Are you eating enough in general? So I find in 90% of my client base, they're not eating enough. So we can
Okay.
always start there and just say, okay, now that we know that, give me a 2 week rundown of your nutrition. Like, what do you do? Like, even if it's waffles and pancakes on the weekend, or or whatever it is, or you go out, maybe you have you're a CEO and you go out to a lot of dinners and meetings and blah blah blah, and it goes on, and there's drinks and you don't eat. That happens. I have clients like that fit that
Yeah.
protocol. Totally normal, and they just survive on adrenaline basically, or the odd not as healthy food that they can get during the week from the office. All totally fine. We'll start there. So I always find one tweak we can make with them, something really easy. like introduce some protein. And I say once a week, start small. So you have your week. Which day of the week are you going to introduce some protein at lunchtime to give you the energy to get through the day? So we start there and we climb that big ladder. You can't do everything. You can't build Rome, in one day. So you can't do your 2.0 version of yourself in one day. It's not going to happen. But give yourself a year and tackle the smaller things, the lowest hanging fruit business. You try to figure out, I can sit for 5 minutes, in my bed before hitting the ground, running with all the children and blah, blah, blah that goes on, whatever that schedule is for you. Totally fine. But how about 5 minutes in the bed before you get up and say to yourself, I'm grateful for these 3 things. And you don't even have to write them. You can even, go to your phone and record them, or you can just say them to yourself, in the bathroom while you're brushing your teeth. But you've made one change and you maintain that one change for 2 weeks, and you put a check mark on your calendar if you have either an electronic calendar, or you want to see it. You want to have some positive reinforcement that you did something.
Yes.
So
we are on the same page. I'm like, our brains work so much alike. And this is a great conversation because these are
Thank
the
you.
parts that are missing. And I like you said, starting small and being able to build. And
Oh yeah.
just even recently, I refer to it as habit stacking. And so I'm
Yeah,
like, let's
exactly.
start small. A new
Mhm.
habit every week, every 2 weeks, like whatever that
Yeah,
frequency needs to get, it can be built upon, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. And I'm
right. That's the
complete
biggest
agreement. We
biggest
go all
aha
in.
moment. That's it. The
Yes.
biggest thing is that people need to realize is, don't do something because it's big. Try to break it down into something small. I even, have people who are saying, I want to move. Okay, just walk around the block for, as many times as possible that you can get in the week. Let's start there, and then all of a sudden that just makes a huge difference, because part of it is that they've accepted the fact that they're taking time out for themselves. So
Mhm.
that's a
Yes.
big thing that a lot of people don't realize. All of a sudden they feel healthier. Why? Not because they, ran a marathon or something like that, but they walked around the block. You think, wow, how is that significant? Well, they have taken time out of their day, which is probably the first time in their life that they've said, I'm important. I'm going to walk around the block and then make lunch for everyone. Just,
Yes, it's that investment in yourself, and people think it's like, "Oh, when we invest in ourselves, it automatically has to be through some type of financial resources," and it's like we invest in ourselves just through how we decide to react to situations, the
right.
actions that we take, the thoughts that we have about ourselves, so
Oh, yeah.
that is such wonderful advice. What are
Yeah.
some other just strategies and tips that you would give
Yeah, the
someone
other thing
starting?
is, yeah, a lot of people talk about, water and hydration. So it's very important to understand that um, each person's different. So this is another key piece of the puzzle that I've discovered that people really it would be better if they could incorporate in themselves, in their programs. So let's say you've attacked one piece of the puzzle. You've said, okay, I'm a little low on my nutrition, so I'm going to include some macro that I'm not doing. I'm going to do it once a week and I'm going to see how I feel. Then I'm going to do it twice a week, blah, blah. And you go on and you put your check mark down. We covered that. And then the bigger puzzles are sometimes harder. Like when I hear people say, I need to drink more water, I always ask them why. What is giving you that impression? So
Mhm.
are you feeling like what is the telling thing? And so that's the problem I find globally, around across the board when I talk to people, is that they're unsure why they think they need to do something, and it's totally based on
Okay.
a public Instagram post or something of somebody who is probably not even like them. So when you talk about this whole subject of women and wellness, and just getting better and being the better version of yourself, being the healthier version of yourself, and why are we doing this, is a big question they need to answer. So the first thing I would say is, write down somewhere where it's visible that you can read it every day why you want to do this. Okay, a lot of common answers are, I just want to be a healthier version of myself, but there is a really deep why. So which is why I started with the water thing, because when you ask people why, they don't have an answer. So I like that. I like to be there because that means this is not something that's important for you. You just think it is. And that's a bad place to be because you haven't
Yes.
answered it for yourself. Your why needs to be so important. Now, if you drill down to a lot of my clients who've done this exercise with me, ultimately it points to I want to be the healthier version of me so that I can do what's really important for them. For a lot of them is helping seeing their families grow and do the things that they want to see them do and be around for it. And
Hmm.
they themselves expect a lot. Like a lot of my clients are high level position women, and they want to see themselves maybe be in that. And they want to be fit enough to not say, I can't take that project on because I'm not up to scruff feeling wise. I'm feeling overstressed. They want to know, how can I just squash the stress package down so that
Yep.
I can say, yeah, I can take that on, and by golly, I'll show you how good I'm going to be at that. And that's what they want to live for because they enjoy being the best of them. They've got more to give, and they're oozing at the chomping at the bed, trying to say, I can do this, and I just want a chance. And they can't do that if they're feeling tired all the time, or they're giving their workspace an impression, or themselves an impression that they're not able to. If any kind of molecule of doubt goes into their brain, it's going to
Yes.
be game over. So answer the why. And I guess that would be the biggest tidbit I would give on top of all of this. You want to be hydrated. Why? What is it that's telling you? You want to have more energy. Why? Which one of the factors, which is the lowest hanging fruit? Is it sleep? Is it, it's not necessarily one thing, although maybe
Hmm.
Instagram might be pointing at things. You can't believe what's good for someone else is going to work for you. I wouldn't do Arnold Schwarzenegger's weight training program, for example. Never in a million years would I be able to even come close because it's not for me. My frame is much too
Right.
small for that. My muscles will never be, they can be the Hema muscles. They
Yeah.
can be the biggest version of Hema's muscles, but they're going to be Hema's body. It's going to be me and the version of me.
Hmm.
So I would encourage, that would be the last, kind of tip I would say. We've kind of gone through. They have to take a review of their week, what fits, what's the lowest hanging fruit, where do they want to start, what's one change they can do, track it for 2 weeks, put that check mark on. And the last thing is, maybe that should be the first thing, but they should dig into their why and keep that
Hmm.
up and center, and they should be their own marker. So the HEMA of December, 30th, 2023, and where's the HEMA going to be December 30th, 2024? And then how do I map that out? So I would say those are the kinds of things they should be looking for. Where do they want to be, and how do they take baby steps to get there, and be that version of themselves, and always be focused on creating that self-awareness at the end of the day, also to say, did I do the things that would create the space for myself?
Oh, this is so good. And like I said, I just keep nodding my head yes. Like people that aren't watching on video, I'm just sitting here nodding my head yes. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. This is exactly what needs to happen. And I think even just speaking to moms, like I'm an older mother with little ones, but it's like I was like very professionally driven. Life was all about work and corporate America and, same as you, graduate school, all these things. And
Wow.
then I entered this new phase of life. And it's like in this new phase of life, things look different. And just
Mm.
because we enter a new phase doesn't mean we have to lose parts of ourselves. Like you obviously did not lose this academic side of yourself as you've even progressed into being in the fitness realm, which I don't think
Right.
people would typically understand, and I think it's fantastic.
Mhm.
And be okay with where you're at in this phase of life and know that you have to create a plan that's going to
Mhm.
fit with where you're at right now and what you
Yep.
have to give, and know that you can always revise it. It's like
Yes.
you read something and you can revise it again.
Yes.
And you're speaking to my people of like the working, high achieving professional women that just reminds me of conversations I had this morning. And it's like, and asking those why questions, they're like, I feel like, like I'm in this, I'm ready. I'm having this mind shift
Yeah.
of enjoying the process.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm like, okay, so why? Like, what are our objectives? What are we going after?
Yeah.
And
Well,
for me, I was just like, I'm still in the game.
I know, right? And then you spoke to a really important point that I just want to get in before we finish up, is that this business of why, I'll tell you how deep it is, and maybe we don't have time to cover it today, but a lot of my clientele, including myself, have undergone grief, because when you're at that age, in that over 50 category, you will lose people in your life that are extremely important to you. And you're in that age where you have an extended family, and some of them are aging too, and you encounter grief, and that's a big stressor for a lot of my clientele, including myself. But the biggest question I find, and not to diminish the whole grief therapy thing, that's a big thing on its own and it needs a professional, but there's some things you can do to help yourself before you see the counselor and you see all those professionals. But you need to do, as I said, you need fitness professionals, but you can add these little tidbits of self-analysis and self-awareness exercises. One of the things that really needs to happen is, when people have this kind of a thing, they need to look at why. So you may be feeling lost, and if you sit down with yourself, before you see professionals or before you even have time to analyze and process all of this, but figure out what that person meant to you in your own kind of scheme of things. And it's not going to be the same. And that's why you have to do the personal work. You have to sit, and I do this with a lot of my clients, is yes, you had a loss, but what does that person really mean to you? And how are you going to feel that? Because if you don't feel it, that's where the grief stress takes over your body. And a lot of people, my clientele that I've met up with, I see them at the end of that, where the grief stress affects them physically and they're ill now. And we need to, when I say, you want to not get there, you don't want to get there. So if you did this kind of daily awareness practice, when you do, everyone has loss at some point, when you do come to a major stressor, which is so heart-wrenching that it's hard for yourself to pick yourself up, you will be better prepared to take it on, and it will affect you less. Not going to affect you, of course it will, but it'll affect you less, and the crushing physical fallout from those stressor elements are going to be much less, because you've done the daily self-awareness practice, you've done the physical strengthening, you've done your nutritional work, so you're at and as I said, I stressed before, you'll never be perfect. Don't expect to be a nutritional war horse. But if you're 80% there, if 80% of the week you're eating 80% okay, so I hope that makes sense to people, but like it's 5 days of the week, and each day you don't have to eat bang on, all your meals don't have to be fully nutritionally full. As long as 80% of the day you've had 80% of your fulfilling nutrients, and you're able to function, and your stress is taken care of, your sleep is, all of these parameters are addressed at some level, you're doing something about it, that takes your stress down. If you're proactive about sleep, for example, what are you doing about it? How are you managing it? On weekends, are you trying to get a little bit more? Are you planning your world around you so you get a little bit more? And what are you doing proactively about, life stress? And if you have a practice and all of these are playing in, then you'll be able to take on grief stress, which will come at some point. If you haven't already had things like friends and family have that. Loss is a big thing that it's hard for people to get themselves out. And I've seen it crush a lot of people, and trauma is not an easy thing to do on your own, but you can give it a fighting chance by doing all these things. So I can't stress enough that women over 50 category, or even moms in general, because grief stress doesn't just announce itself to one category. So so crushing defeat is a thing. And so I think it's important for people to answer that why, because you just said that, and I just want to enunciate how important that is. It's not just a nice to have. If you don't have your why, you won't wonder why this person, you lost, is important to you. What role did they play? Is there some way you can preserve that or resurrect it in some other level so that you've got something in that spot? What did they actually mean to you? And that's a
Mhm.
lot of hard work that only you can do. You and your paper and your pen can do
Yeah.
without anyone else in the room. It's hard work, but if you don't do it, the shock of the stress and the event cycle can tear
Mhm.
you down.
It's just this level of preparedness
Yes.
that whether
Yes.
it's, like, say, grief, for me, it was having a child with special needs, with I think any woman going into parenthood, like, there's going to be
Yeah.
all these different things that come along in our life that
Yeah.
if we are taking care of our physical and our mental well-being and
Yep.
being as proactive as possible, we're
That's
going
it.
to be best equipped and prepared to deal
That's
with
it.
anything that life throws our direction.
You got it.
So
The proactive is the key word. You just hit that. That was just exactly what everyone needs to hear. Just be proactive at some level. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to
mhm,
be
yeah,
something, and it has to be trackable. So and that would be, probably the last piece. Don't just say I want to get fit. Say be specific. What is it you want
yes,
exactly? And why? So I think
mhm.
those are the important pieces.
This has been such a great conversation. I said, if
Enjoyed that.
anybody, can you tell us where anybody that's listening, watching, where they can reach out to you at? And then I'll make sure I also post that in the description for everyone.
Yeah, sure. My website is getchanty.com. That's GETSHANTI.com. And I also on Instagram, over 50 Fitness with Hema. That's my Instagram handle. And that's where I, post upcoming programs or things. And on my website, of course, they can reach out with free downloads about things they can do for back pain, free recipe books, and they could just email me if they interested in a specific thing. I have free downloads for almost every aspect of being healthy. So
That's amazing. Well, thank you so
thank
much for
you.
being with us today. This was
Thank
a
you.
fantastic
Appreciate it.
episode, and I think we will have to get back together and talk about some other really hard topics.
I appreciate it so much, Sasha, and I really enjoyed our conversation. It was almost like two people talking the same thing, and it was amazing. It's almost like the same message. Yeah, it's great. I love that.
Total same wavelength today, and I said I appreciate it. What a nice way to like wrap up a Saturday morning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let me see. I don't know what buttons. It's in